My name is David Cotton. I am the President of the Southern Public Communications Association. I would like to thank you, the American media, for taking the time to watch this informational video and understanding that the American public communication system needs your help. Today, approximately 9 million American families still have no phone at all and rely solely on payphones as their means to access the American public communication system. Billions of calls are still made annually on payphones, yet they are rapidly disappearing from the American landscape. America learned the value of payphones in the wakes of natural disasters such as Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. The terrorist attack of 9/11 also reminded Americans of the necessity of the archaic but reliable payphone. For days, it was the only way that victims were able to contact family members, and people were lined up by the blocks in hundreds waiting on their turn to use the phone. Disasters can and will happen again, and without your help, there will probably not be a payphone available for these victims to use. Not only do victims of disasters or the poor rely solely on payphones to communicate, but all Americans turn to them in times of need. Cell phone batteries go dead, and there are still many areas in America where there is no cell phone signal today. I could go on and on citing instances of victims of crimes needing a payphone to dial 911, the homeless, someone in a battered women's shelters, or halfway houses having an emergency, or just imagine the lost child needing help and not being able to find a phone. I'm sure you get the picture. Unfortunately, it seems most of our government officials or regulatory entities have turned its back on our industry and the American people mentioned previously. The irony of it all is that there have been laws in place since 1996 that would have, and could going forward, help this industry survive, if only Congress would force the FCC to take the appropriate action. In 1996, Congress found that the availability of payphones for the use of the American public was an important part of the nation's communication infrastructure. To meet this challenge, Congress mandated that the FCC adopt rules, number one, to stop further discriminatory anti-competitive conduct by the bell companies in the form of egregious overcharging to their competitors to attach payphone lines to their phones, and that the payphone operators were entitled to be compensated for the cordless long distance and other type calls like credit card calls or prepaid phone card calls that are sent to these carriers' networks from payphones for free. While new policy developments and rule modifications by the FCC that actually would support the continued deployment of payphones, as was contemplated by the congressional mandate in '96, this would be a help in ensuring their continuing availability to the public. What is critical today is simply for the FCC to enforce its existing policies and regulations rather than allowing a lack of compliance or at best lip service by the carriers. Congressional mandates should not be optional to major corporations. Here we are 12 years later and still no justice. With this said, I have identified three main issues that are crucial for our survival. The new services test. Rates must continue to be cost-based, and refunds for overcharges by the local exchange carriers must be paid, and these same carriers should not be able to hide behind some state statute to avoid uniformity of federal law. Congress must clarify the ambiguity in the Telecom Act that allows these same legs to apply their massive lobbying efforts on the FCC. The FCC must preempt anything that does not provide for the lowest rates possible on payphone lines, and full refunds for overcharges must be submitted. This should also apply to independent telephone companies as well as the bell companies. Some of these independent telephone companies still charge as much as $50 to $60 a month for a telephone line. All of these rates must also be looked at again this year to check that continual cost-based rates are being applied now. This is also required by law. Secondly, dial-around compensation. Long-distance carriers, to this day, still refuse to honor their compensation requirements under the law. Many pay little, and some refuse to pay at all. The independent payphone provider must allow, by law, these types of calls to be made for free from their phones. However, these carriers get paid but refuse to compensate the payphone provider for the use of their equipment. They believe that the FCC has taken minimal or no action to enforce the law. No one in Washington cares if they conform to the law. And unfortunately, so far, they're right. And last, the Universal Service Fund. Once items 1 and 2 have been finally corrected by Congress and the FCC, these entities must look at allowing public payphones to qualify to receive subsidies from the Universal Service Fund. If you look at what the intentions of the Universal Service Fund was and is currently, the service-enrolled public payphones play in America today, common sense dictates that payphones should qualify for the Universal Service Fund. Instead, this fund has been plundered by many of the major telecommunication companies. I know that you have many newsworthy issues concerning our nations and its citizens on your desk, and now are very busy. I pray that you will find 15 minutes of your time to review this issue and assign someone at your organization to research and raise awareness to our cause. You know as well as I do that Congress will pay attention to the power of the media, and that the media, you, more than anything, shape the direction of our country and the minds of its citizens. You have probably noticed that I have mentioned, as required by law, many times in this message. This is what we are after: clarification of the law, enforcement of the law, and justice for someone other than the major corporations. I pray that you will contact me at 1-866-305-0836 or our national organization, the American Public Communications Council, at 1-800-868-2722 to discuss this issue in depth. We can then forward you the pertinent information and letters necessary that will provide the data needed for you to accurately report on our cause. At the end of the day, the question you must ask yourself is: the media willing to raise awareness and stand for the little guy and millions of less affluent Americans, or allow big business and their money to continue to shape and guide government and law? We have sent all 537 U.S. congressmen and senators our plea for help in getting the FCC to enforce their own laws and mandates. There is a story here. Remember, payphones are like policemen and firemen. No one thinks about them until they need one, and when they cannot find one, they are angry. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. Our prayers are with you all.